Am I the a-hole for posting a picture of my baby? Me, 28 female, and my ex-husband, 29 male Ben, got divorced at the beginning of last year. After we got divorced, I found out I was pregnant. I decided to keep the baby, and in November of last year, my son Christopher was born. Chris lives with me Sunday to Friday, and on Saturdays he stays with Ben. My husband's new fiancée, Genevieve, yes, with AJ, is acting like Chris is her son. She's trying to teach Chris to call her mommy, even though that is what he calls me. She criticizes my purchases and baby products and calls me cheap, and even tells me she should have part custody even though she and Ben aren't even married. What pushed me too far was when I posted a picture of my baby. Genevieve had the audacity to tell me I can't take a picture of my baby without her permission when I gave birth to the baby and I take care of him most of the week. The worst part is that she posts pictures of the baby, and when she does, she makes it seem like he is her son. After this instance, I couldn't handle her anymore. I gave her and Ben an ultimatum about how she was treating Chris like he is her son when he only sees her once a week, and she isn't even his official stepmom. Ben said I'm being A, and Jen is just being nice. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. I would also check your state laws and parental alienation. It's one thing to want to love the child of your partner/spouse. It's another to pretend to be mom when mom is in the picture and you are the main caretaker. Not to mention to contact all social media sites and report all photos for unsolicited pictures of a minor. As OP is Chris's parent, she can legally request for them to be taken down. Not the a-hole, but stop letting her get you riled up. Just tell her you're not interested in her opinion on baby products, that you're not discussing sharing custody with her, that you will take whatever pictures you want of your son. Don't dignify her nonsense with emotional reaction just clearly trying to provoke. Just say, I'm not discussing this with you. Yes, this. Ben is the only one you should talk with anything about. She texts, you don't reply, or tell her the first few times that you will only discuss with Ben. They're not married, and even if they were newly so, Jen has no place in the child custody discussion. Eventually though, if Jen stays and marries in, she needs to be a partner in raising Chris, united front. That all needs to start with Ben and come to you both through Ben. Not the a-hole. You should get a lawyer involved in your custody agreement. If this woman remains in your son's life, you are going to have to set clear boundaries. Your ex doesn't seem to understand how confusing this will be in the future. Next story. Am I the a-hole for accidentally upsetting my niece by saying her mom's life would be better if she wasn't born? To summarize, I, 32 female, got into an argument over something ridiculous, and now everyone's mad at me. When my sister, 26 female, was 17, she got pregnant and had a baby girl. Obviously, since she was young, she wasn't exactly ready to raise a kid, but my family did the best we could to help her out. She currently has a stable job and is living with her child and the child's father in their own apartment. The issue is that since she had the baby so young, she never got to really experience her life. I'm child-free, and I'm always enjoying new life experiences, and I know my sister is jealous of me for it. The other day, I came over for her daughter's birthday party, and we were talking about her as a baby. At one point, we started to argue about how she was raised, and I said, "Don't you ever think your life would have been better if she had never been born?" It turns out her daughter was in earshot of this, so she heard everything and got really upset. My sister got defensive and said that her child was the best thing to ever happen to her, called me Nahal and kicked me out of the party. She blocked my number and won't talk to me at all now. My mom is saying I should apologize, but my dad agrees with me on this and says my sister was overreacting. Maybe I was a bit too aggressive when I said it, but I know what I said is true. Am I the a-hole for what I did? You're the a-hole. You're such an a-hole. It's not even a debate. Nobody gives a damn about your child-free status, or how you're a narcissist who thinks your sister is jealous of you. That's her child that she chose to raise. She loves her child more than you and always will, and your role as sister and aunt is either to support them or leave them the hell alone. You should apologize, but I hope she doesn't accept it. You view her daughter as an inconvenience, and I personally wouldn't allow you anywhere near my kid if you were my sister and had that selfish viewpoint. One other thing I'd like to point out is that the only person who sounds jealous here is you. Jealous, petty, and cruel. Your sister is living the best life she can with everything the world gave her, and you're disparaging her privately and publicly because it doesn't fit with your ideal? Sounds to me like your sister turns lemons into lemonade, and form of a beautiful child and a successful life, and you're the sour one. OP is definitely the jealous one. Her sister has a child, a job, and a family. OP is projecting. Assuming her sister is jealous because OP is child-free and enjoying new life experiences. Even double down on it because she knows what she's saying is true. Even in her response to the bot, all she says is that she should have waited until her niece was out of earshot to say. OP is bitter. Having a kid doesn't mean you don't get to experience life. Such an ugly attitude. I hope her sister keeps her blocked and keeps her away from her daughter. She obviously has some type of resentment towards this child. You're the a-hole. Holy cow, I was eager to read this, thinking, come on now, let's find out what the context is before jumping to a conclusion. But nope, 100% you are certified, grade A, worst of the worst a-hole. It was the kid's birthday party. The kid's birthday party. Even if the kid wasn't within earshot, that's not okay to say. I would suggest you apologize, but part of me thinks your sister and her family is better off with no contact from you. I agree with all of this. Why was OP even arguing about how her niece was raised at the child's birthday party? It's so inappropriate. You're the a-hole, OP. So much that I'm shocked you even had to ask. Next story. Am I the a-hole for being offended that my in-laws asked me to have an induction? Plus a little update. I'm 24 female and pregnant with my first child, and I'm due the week before Thanksgiving. My parents live outside of the country, and due to COVID restrictions, my husband, 27 male, and I were not sure if they would be able to make it for the birth. So when my in-laws asked if they could come to stay with us close to our due date, we said yes. My husband's family is huge, and this is something I didn't even consider when we agreed to this, which already has been causing me to have a ton of anxiety. He has 6 siblings, a brother-in-law, and his parents coming. His family is really hoping to stay for Thanksgiving with us after the baby is born. Since his sister and brother-in-law weren't able to take time off for the due date or Thanksgiving Day, we all agreed to celebrate it on the 30th. Well, today we got a call from his family saying that his sister no longer wants to celebrate it on the 30th, but is giving us the option to either have Thanksgiving on the 20th or the 21st. My due date is on the 19th. We told them we have no idea when the baby is actually coming, so we could not promise that this would work. They then asked when our next OB appointment is, and told us to tell our doctor to have the baby induced on the 12th, since that works better for the family. I'm pissed. They didn't even ask us how we feel about it. We are already having to plan to have the house full of people with a newborn while COVID is still a thing. And now they're trying to convince me, the lady who had been puking her guts out for the last 7 months, to make a rushed decision about my first pregnancy to appease other people's schedule. I'm already terrified of the unknown, and this is causing me so much stress. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to be induced and for being upset that they asked for this in the first place? Info. We did require that everyone is up to date with flu, COVID, and TDAP shots. We also will require masks to be worn, and no one other than the parents will be allowed to hold the baby. As we now know these things probably won't be respected, we're trying to figure out a new arrangement so they're not all staying with us. For context, my parents are not American, and I did not grow up celebrating Thanksgiving, so I personally do not care for it. I'm in no way prioritizing this over my child. Ultimately, while attempting to protect other people's feelings, we failed to set boundaries. We're working on it. Now for the comments before the little update. Not a home. We are already having to plan to have the house full of people with a newborn. Stop doing that. Even if the baby comes on schedule, you are not going to want to entertain a household full of guests when you've just given birth and are trying to look after a new baby. The decision to invite everyone to stay was the wrong decision, and you and your husband need to withdraw the invitation. Yes, I agree it was the wrong decision. My in-laws owned a property we're renting, so we initially felt like we had to say yes, and we genuinely didn't even consider how much of an issue it would be. It was pretty responsible of us, honestly. Get your doctor to tell you that you can't have guests that early in the baby's life. Too much risk. Then they would have to openly tell you that they don't care about your baby, at which point, to hell with them. Induction should only be for medical necessity. You're not the a-hole. That is an insane demand to make of anyone. I hope your partner shut it down. I would tell them all to buzz off, not to come and be an additional stress towards to the end of your pregnancy / the first days of your life as a new mom. Unless they're coming down to help you, they should get the hell off. NTA, NTA, NTA. And now for the little update. My husband called my father-in-law and told him we're not comfortable having anyone stay here. Father-in-law is currently looking for another place for them to stay and said he'll cancel the trip entirely if they're unable to do so. I'm not sure what our relationship with them is right now since so many lines were crossed, but we'll continue to work on setting boundaries. Thank you to mostly everyone for being so kind and giving me a push to stand up for myself and prioritize my transition into parenthood. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for moving out because my nephew is moving in? I'm 23 female still living with my parents, but paying rent of $600 per month, grocery money to my parents of $150 and all my own bills. I graduated uni last year and started my first grown-up job in January. Despite wanting to move out when I started working, my parents convinced me to stay living at home in order to save money, because we live in a very high cost of living city. They told me a few weeks ago that in October, my nephew 17 male would be moving in with us indefinitely. My nephew's mom is my half-sister, and I've only met him once in my life as he lived across the country. I have no problem with him at all, and I know family's family, but I really don't want to live with a teenage boy again. I also have 2 brothers, one still lives at home. Our house is too small for this many people, and I really wanted my own space for friends and dating, etc. So I found a decent studio for $1,500 and told my parents I'm moving out. They were pissed, because they said they need my rent money for their mortgage, and especially with my nephew now living with them, groceries plus living expenses will be more expensive. I told them it's not my problem because they invited an additional person to live with us without asking me, so I can make my own decision without asking them. My nephew can get a job when it comes, or they can ask my sister for rent money, but it's not my responsibility. They said I'm an a-hole because family always helps family. Not the a-hole. Your parents unilaterally made a decision about your living situation. They changed the terms, so it's perfectly reasonable for you to leave because those terms are not what you want, nor what you'd previously agreed to. Exactly. And I hope he's old enough to be making her own decisions about this stuff. I don't know why the parents expect a 23-year-old to live with them forever. Not stay home. I was in the same scenario. I was 27 when I moved out because my dad stopped working and I was supporting my family. They will continue to rely on your money. Unless you want to live at home forever, jump. I'd agree with the change in terms thing. If your money's that important to the house, you should have a voice in major changes. Why are they voluntarily adding more people, especially minors that cannot contribute, if they are already depending on your rent money? Not stay home. At some point, you are going to leave home. Now is your time. Your parents are apparently enjoying your money and have perhaps come to rely on it. Better you get out, because the longer you stay, the harder it will be to go. Not stay home. They said they need my rent money for their mortgage. And especially with my nephew now living with them, groceries plus living expenses will be more expensive. So you pay rent, but the cousin does not? Another reason to move out. It will be good for you to finally move out. Enjoy it, and do not let them have a key. And now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for kid shaming a couple? Context. I'm 28 female, very uncertain with handling kids. Maybe because I've seen parents who flipped the hell out when someone tells their kids no, and how some kids run feral in public places. I don't hate kids, but I'm just very awkward about them. The only kid I'm comfortable handling is my goddaughter, Grace, 3. I just fell completely in love with her the first time I met her. Grace's mom, Val, is a very close friend of mine, and often calls me to help because I live nearby and have a flexible work schedule. Prior to Grace's birth, Val told me that she'd need my help more often since her parents weren't able to travel, and her husband had to go back to the office. But she wanted to give me the choice to say no, because she knew I wasn't familiar around kids. I said yes anyway, but made sure to attend some infant classes, learn baby CPR, and added on some childcare classes with Val and Dan so I wasn't completely clueless. I constantly communicate with Val on what I can or cannot do, in terms of setting boundaries when Grace acts up, so everyone is on the same page. Issue? My husband and I were talking to a group of friends when the topic of Grace came up. One couple has a kid around Grace's age, but he is a menace. He's bitten me before because I tried to stop him from running out the front door. This couple asked if I'm teaching Grace not to have fun. And when I asked them to clarify, they said that I was so good at saying no they wondered if Grace has even heard the word yes from me. I was hurt and asked if they would want their kid to touch a hot pan instead, or get hit by a car when running out the front door, things their kid has done. Because having fun is more important than being safe, right? They seemed flustered when I brought it up, but tried to wave it off as, well, luckily you're not our babysitter or our kid would lose his spark. I just rolled my eyes and laughed, which apparently offended them because they said that it felt like I was kid-shaming them. My husband, he's a child therapist, said it's not the kids' fault when their parents fail to parent, which pissed them off even more. Conversation ended on a sour note, but no one is called as a-holes, as everyone else has been a victim at one point or another of their kids' behavior. But I've been thinking, I don't have kids, and I don't know how difficult it is to raise one. Maybe they're trying, but some kids are really unmanageable. So maybe I'm the a-hole for being rude to them about it? Not the a-hole, because you were just defending yourself. They were rude in the first place. And you obviously seem like you really want what's best for Grace, seeing as you did your research, CPR, etc. They probably meant it as a joke, but definitely sounds like they meant it as an underlying dig at you anyway. If they can give it, they should be able to take it. Glass houses get you every time. Not stay home. Not stay home. You didn't kid shame them. You pointed out their neglect. The spark is called curiosity. Some curiosity is nurtured. Some curiosity should not. Why are trees green versus, will taking a sharp knife to my skin make me bleed? Absolutely. It's a fine line to walk. Because there are a lot of things in the world that can hurt a kiddo. But curiosity cannot be re-lured once tapped out. It sounds like the neighbor couple overreacted on the free-range feral child erection and are trying to justify the result of their actions. Also, not stay home. I have a kiddo with spark who asks a million questions and make things out of household objects, and who is absolutely 100% not allowed to bite people. Am I the a-hole for interrupting dinner and telling everyone what my ex-husband's wife did? My ex-husband and I divorced 6 years ago, and we share custody of our 9-year-old daughter. Since then, he's been nasty and mean to me. I kept contact with my former in-laws as they care about the relationship with me. My former mother-in-law has done a lot for me. She's the best grandma my daughter has, and she visits and is always there for me, despite my ex's opinions. I got married to my now husband, and we had a boy together. He was born with a chronic medical condition. It was so hard seeing him like that. His health was getting better, until I woke up in the morning finding him not breathing. My husband and I were devastated. I was allowed to see him later, and when I held him for the last time, he was so cold. I just wanted to keep him warm like I did before. He died a month before his first birthday. The grief is very raw, and we're hurting, but we were overwhelmed by the support everyone showed us. I was told my ex-husband's wife had a baby boy a few days before my son's first birthday. She called to extend her condolences when my son passed away, but I ignored her because of her comments on my son. So, I had a small gathering last week on my son's first birthday. After we took minutes of silence, then we received a package wrapped in paper. I opened the box and found an album full of my ex-husband and his wife's newborn photos. We were in disbelief. It was sent by his wife. I didn't understand why she sent them, so I called my ex and he hung up on me. I was livid. I went over to my former mother-in-law's house at night because she wanted me there. I saw my ex and his wife were also there. Former mother-in-law said they came unexpectedly, but insisted that I come in since the entire family was there. I took a few minutes while they were having dinner to ask my ex's wife why she sent me her son's photo album on my son's first birthday. Everyone was shocked. She looked nervous and kept looking around. Former mother-in-law asked for clarification, and I told her what happened and what her daughter-in-law sent. She was livid. Started yelling at her and pointing at her, calling her awful and disrespectful. My ex kept defending her, claiming I was lying. So I just pulled the album out of my bag and put it on the table and walked out. I left while everyone was yelling at her. My ex came over later and started berating me, arguing about me interrupting/ruining dinner. Worse, ruining his wife's relationship with his family, because now everyone's been turned against her and keep yelling at her when she's dealing with postpartum. He claimed I'm using my son's death for attention and to turn his family against his wife out of resentment. That's when I kicked him out. My husband said I should have done that, but I didn't intend to. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. She got what she deserved. Sending you that album on your deceased son's birthday was horrible. And if she had no way to defend herself, her intentions were clearly cruel. I wish you the best. Thank you, and you're absolutely right. I wanted an explanation, but she didn't say anything. I don't know why. But after this move, I'm worried that my daughter will become affected or influenced by her behavior. Her relationship with my daughter is fine. I always make sure my daughter is protected from any conflicts between me and her stepmom. I'm just worried about my daughter after what that woman did. You might want to talk to a lawyer about this. You might want to change your custody arrangement. Not at a-hole. Well, if it isn't the consequences of her own actions. You didn't ruin her relationship with his family. She did by being a complete monster. I can't imagine what is wrong with that woman that she would do something so self-centered and hurtful. I'm so sorry about the loss of your precious son. May his memory be a blessing. Not at a-hole. You couldn't have done anything if she never sent the album. And who sends that through husband's ex anyway? No one with good intentions. I'm so sorry for your loss. Interestingly, this isn't even a casually malicious move. It's not like she lost her cool for a couple minutes and talked crap about Opie. This takes some real planning and resources. Purchasing a photo album and getting photo prints can cost anywhere from $40 to $100. Then it will take a couple hours at least to pick everything out and assemble it. Then you need to go to USPS or somewhere else, package it and ship it. This is an endeavor that took several days, if not a couple weeks to pull off. All while this lady is 9 months pregnant or has a newborn. How did she possibly find the time and energy to pull off this pet project with the sole intent of antagonizing her husband's ex? Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for faking sleeping all night to see if my wife is lying? The past couple of months, my wife has been complaining about our cats. She's been claiming that the cats wake her up constantly, and that she's frustrated every night that she has to get up and open the door for the cats, or the cats keep making noises, or the cats keep jumping on her. It got to the point where she started saying she wants me to get rid of them. I told her I've never seen or heard any of this, but she claims I sleep through it all. She kept telling me she was getting less and less sleep and kept acting aggressive, blaming lack of sleep from the cats, and that if I didn't get rid of them, she'd leave me. I legitimately started considering giving the cats to my sister until I noticed something. One morning, she claimed she had gotten up multiple times throughout the night to help the cats. She listed a bunch of times. I thought it was weird because I had been up until 4 a.m. And she claimed that she got up at 1 a.m. to open the door for them, and a few times around 3 a.m. because they were meowing and jumping on her. I was in the bedroom the entire time while she slept, and I know none of that happened. Things weren't adding up, so I decided to run a test. I waited until she said she was going to bed. Then I let the cats out of our bedroom, lowered my phone brightness, and faked going to sleep. I just laid there in bed for the entire night, bored, but I definitely did not fall asleep. I made sure to make timestamps every 30 minutes on my phone through Discord just to be sure. I marked down every noise my cats made. One cat had jumped down from something and made a little sound at 3:18 a.m. And one ate food relatively quietly by the bedroom door at 4:57 a.m. Other than that, nothing happened. Sure enough, my wife slept from 11 p.m. until 9 a.m. And that morning, she claimed she had woken up at least 7 times to open the doors and from cat noises and cats jumping on her. At this point, I was pissed because she was clearly lying to me. I was exhausted and fed up with the lies, so I just bluntly called her out on it. I told her, "That's funny. I stayed up all night to monitor the cats. They weren't even in the room at all last night. I have timestamps and everything. So, you've been lying to me and trying to convince me to get rid of my cats. Why?" She just sat there quietly shaking and looking pissed, then got up and left without answering. She came back hours later and ignored me whenever I talked. And when I asked her how I'm the bad guy in this situation, she finally said that I was treating her like a child by lying about sleeping and staying up all night just to see if she was lying or not. And that making timestamps and everything, as if I was an investigator, was going too far and makes me an obsessive a-hole. I did it because she was threatening to make me get rid of my cats or she'd leave me, and her claims didn't add up. So, am I an obsessive a-hole? Not an a-hole. That was gaslighting and manipulative. And if she had issues with your cats, she should have said so directly. Don't let her flip this around on you either by making you out to be the bad guy for catching her in a lie. It's a classic move to shift blame. Don't fall for it. Not an a-hole, but you've kind of called her bluff about her leaving you now that you've removed Kat's excuse from the equation. Wishing you all the best. If it's her or the cats, and you're on the fence, why the hell are you still together? She's told you she wants the cats gone. She's told you she will leave you if the cats aren't gone. Your choice was a power move, sure. But at what cost? She still wants the cats out. Not the a-hole in my opinion. You had to test her. She's trying to get you to get rid of your pets, and essentially blackmailing your relationship over it. What's your next move? I honestly don't know my next move. We've been essentially perfect together for years, and she's never done anything like this before. I didn't even realize she was capable of such immature actions. I'd hate to have to go through a messy divorce and potentially lose a bunch of my own money/items over one lie I've ever caught her in. It might be easier/cheaper to just deal with the situation through couples therapy and give it one more chance, honestly. Though the prenup we signed would make a potential divorce a lot cleaner. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not letting my boyfriend ask my retired parents for money to send his mom to Hawaii and take care of her expenses? So background. I am from a large family and my parents are middle-class retired. My boyfriend of 10 years got drunk last night and promised his 90-year-old mom that he would get her to Hawaii because she's always wanted to go. I'm cool with this. I agree to try to help figure it out with him and save so we can send her. Important note, I'm currently the only one with any income. He makes no money but is opening a business. Upon hanging up with his own mom, he immediately calls my mom, non-stop, until she answers. Then says, Mom, I need to send my mom to Hawaii because it's her dream and we can't afford it. How can we make this happen? I shut it down right there. I cannot believe he called my mom to ask for that kind of money without even discussing it with me first to see how I felt about the plan. I would not have agreed to this. He became belligerent, called me every disgusting name under the sun, told me that I've disrespected his mom and now don't care about her, and eventually told me we are breaking up. He continued screaming at me for the hour ride home, and we slept separately last night. Usually he comes in the morning with an apology, but today, I woke up to him cussing and throwing things around the kitchen. When I asked if I could help him, he responded no. I asked if he's still angry about last night, and he said he's livid and doesn't want to talk. Am I the a-hole? Am I missing something that I should be seeing? We called his mom at his insistence, and I told her I wouldn't let him ask my mom for the money, and she was fine with it, which pissed him off even more. Open to hearing the truth. Edit. A lot of people are speculating, so I'm female 35, he's male 36. He grew up in a foster system. Now for the top comments. Whoa, hold up. Usually he comes in the morning with an apology, but today I woke up to him cussing and throwing things around the kitchen. Usually? Is this a pattern? Oh hell no. He said you two were breaking up? Take him up on this. He's got a lot of nerve to ask your parents for money like this, and then being mad when you didn't appreciate him overstepping you to ask your parents. Talk about entitlement. Absolutely not an a-hole. Thank you for catching this. I know this sub is all for dumping people at the slightest thing, but this is concerning. His entitlement to your money, your family's money, not to mention his temper tantrum the next morning, is all behavior I'm familiar with. It doesn't usually end well. Just because you spent 10 years in something or someone doesn't make it worth it. Don't hang on to your mistakes just because you spent a lot of time making them. Not an a-hole. When I ask if I could help him. Why? Why would you ask him that? This guy is a manipulative abuser and you're too close to see it. That he would do this and then have the gall to get mad at you is next level. My eyebrows just about to shut off my head when I read this post. You need to get rid of this guy. He is toxic. Now I've been in therapy for the last few months and had come to the conclusion that either I was a complete narcissist in pushing him, or that he's completely toxic for me and I need to figure out how to end things. Given all of these responses, I think I have my answer. Now I have to entangle finances and figure out the lease situation. Thank you for your honesty. And you are with this verbally mistreating, entitled, manipulative freeloader because not a-hole. I know this sounds like excuses, but it's not always been like this. He worked and made lots of money for the first few years while I was making next to nothing. He wanted to quit for a variety of reasons, but mostly it's been his dream to open a business. I agreed to take on the finances for him to try to follow his dream. He's just not been able to make it work yet. And while having the other people see it as making it clear, he is usually very sweet and validating. 10 years is a long time, and little changes over the years seems to have mounted into something I could no longer see. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for having saved up a lot of money and not telling my wife? My parents got into a car crash and passed away when I was like 18. Mostly everything was left to me except for a few things given to different family members. I decided to open up a bank account and save up the money for when I might need it. I also added more money from each of my paychecks. When I meet my now wife, I didn't tell her about the money. I instead told her not to worry about having to pay for an emergency, so I would have it covered. Now we're married and we're doing well. We just had a kid some months ago and something came up unexpectedly, so we were running short on money. I told her I would figure it out and to not stress about it. She became suspicious about how I was able to pull it off. I repeatedly told her not to worry and that at the end of the day, it didn't matter. She wasn't satisfied with that answer. She went asking around, and one of my cousins told her about me saving money after my parents' accident. Nobody knows how much I saved, so my cousin probably thought it was a small amount. My wife is now upset about it. I honestly don't know what the issue is. I could have used the money for anything I wanted, but instead I'm using it for my family. So am I the a-hole for saving money without my wife knowing? Saving money? Good. Keeping sole access to it? Fine. Hiding financial information from a spouse? Really bad move. So, a softie or the a-hole? This is spot on, OP. I'm really sorry, but when other people on this sub talk about having personal/secret funds in case of emergencies or needing to get out of certain situations, we are cool with it. Why not with this guy? You're the a-hole. It's never good to have secrets in marriage. If she was just your girlfriend, it would be a totally different issue. But she's your wife, your other half, your equal. What if something would have happened to you and she didn't know about the funds and she needed them? Keeping a secret like that can really break trust. It makes you look like you don't trust her and you're hiding things. How would you feel if she did that to you? It doesn't matter how he would feel. He doesn't get to determine whether or not it is okay or reasonable for her to get upset. I hate when people ask this. It just makes it easier for a-holes to claim they don't care, so no one else should care either. I get not telling random people, dude, but this is your freaking wife. Your life partner. You say you would be thrilled if the situation was reversed, but I doubt many spouses would take this news well. It's not that you started saving, it's that you had assets that you kept completely hidden from your wife, who had just been under an enormous amount of stress because she thought you were equal partners in your marriage. Because she trusted you to be as transparent about your finances as she is with hers. If the person I married all of a sudden had money they'd never once mentioned to me, I would assume there was something seriously shady going on. And your refusal to accept her point of view doesn't bode well. You're the a-hole. Am I the a-hole for telling my son exactly what my husband did despite him begging me not to tell? I have a son, Adam, 14, from my previous marriage. I'm currently with my husband of 4 years. I handle everything related to Adam's school. He has a friend, Dean, 14, that he started hanging out with a year ago. Dean is an amazing boy and has been nothing but a great influence for Adam. I met Dean's dad, Mike, who's a single dad, and we'd see each other daily for school pickup/drop-offs. My husband kept asking about Mike and pointed out that he's being boundary stumping, but I disagree. Unfortunately, Adam fell sick months ago and had to undergo a surgery recently. It's been hard, but Dean kept visiting. Sometimes Mike would come too, and my husband would either ignore Mike or make passive comments towards him. Mike picked up on that, and I told my husband to knock it off because his hostility affected Adam and Dean as well. Days ago, I found Adam crying in his room. This was weeks after getting discharged. I asked and he said that Dean sent him a text telling him they were no longer friends and blocked his number. I was confused as they were fine. I wanted to go talk to Dean, but the next day I found his phone in my husband's car. I confronted him and he said he borrowed it from Dean, but I didn't buy it. After pushing, he confessed that he stole Dean's phone at a hospital and sent Adam a text telling him not to contact him again. I asked why, and he said it was all Mike's fault for being too close to me and acting inappropriately, and said that he didn't want to directly tell Adam to no longer speak to Dean, and chose this strategy to not make Adam hate him while keeping Dean and by extension Mike away. This hit a nerve so hard I started screaming at him. He said he already expressed how uncomfortable he felt with Mike being around, and I kept brushing it off. I said it was because of how ridiculous his argument was. Mike has been nothing but respectable and helpful. I yelled, calling him insecure and unreasonable and also cruel for causing Adam heartache with a stunt. He begged I don't tell Adam, but I took the phone and returned it to Dean and explained to him and Adam what happened. Adam is no longer speaking to my husband, and he is blaming me for telling instead of keeping it between the adults like I'm supposed to. Now for the top comments. Holy moly! Not stay home. So let me get this straight. Your husband, the one that stole a phone from a kid and then used said stolen phone to mentally mistreat your son because hubby is insecure, is now blaming you for salvaging your son's friendship and giving back the stolen property? What? Correct. That's pretty much what happened. He's now blaming and guilting me for having his relationship with Adam ruined. Your husband is the only a-hole in this situation. Hurting Adam like that was unforgivable. He let his insecurities get the better of him. I really don't see how you come back from this even if he agreed to individual and couples therapy. Not stay home. How dare he? He is blaming me for telling instead of keeping it between the adults like I'm supposed to. Which adults is he talking about? Because stealing Dean's phone to text Adam to not contact him again just to keep Mike away from you does not sound like adult behavior. He needs to apologize to Adam and get counseling for his insecurity. You're not stay home. Also, fairly certain that several crimes were committed here as a direct result of the husband being so petty and jealous. It's actually concerning that befriending another parent triggered this kind of response in him. It reeks of distrust and controlling behavior. I think the damage will always be done between Adam and the husband. I hope you should also consider if this is enough damage for her too. Not stay home. I don't care what Mike was doing. I don't care what you were doing. He said he wanted it to stay between the adults. And yes, it should have. But you didn't bring the kids into it. He did. Because he stole a child's phone to manipulate your child. He stole from a child so that he could manipulate and lie to your child. He tried to ruin their friendship instead of nutting the heck up and being a man. And trying to find a compromise. Trying to actually communicate instead of passive-aggressively being a prick to Mike and you. Literally anything that didn't involve trying to destroy a friendship between two children. One of whom was recovering from a freaking surgery. I'm not usually on the whole girl dump him train on AITA, but this doesn't even need couples therapy. This is a deal breaker. Next story. Am I the a-hole for renting out my husband's man cave? Since we moved into our house 3 years ago, my husband lives in his man cave. The walkout basement that he plays video games in mostly is a one bed, one bath with a small bar area that can serve as a kitchen. He only comes up for food, to prep for work or to sleep, and it's been bothering me because he never helps with the housework or our two sons. But at least he goes to work, so I let it go and leave him be. 5 months ago, he was laid off his job and has been applying for another one in sales. Right now, he's collecting unemployment. And along with my teacher's salary, it isn't enough to cover everything. My son, 9 male, has been playing guitar for 4 years and loves it. But his lesson and guitar are quite expensive, around $300 a month. And my other son does kickboxing, which is $170 a month. I didn't want them to have to give up their activities, so I looked for other ways to make money. My husband is very prideful and won't work a job beneath him. I've already tried to convince him to work a $16 per hour cashier job for our family friend, and he refuses because it would be humiliating having friends see him work at a cash register at 37 years old. So, I found that we could rent the basement out for $1,100 a month, and it would allow my sons to stay with their activities. I told my husband, who refused, saying it was his space. I argued I didn't get a space, and if he wanted to keep it, he should get a job while he's looking for another sales job. He got angry and told me it was his house, and he won't allow it being rented out. We both put down payments down and we both make money in this house, but it's his house? I told him we are not making ends meet, and he told me to cancel all unnecessary spending, including our son's activities. I argued if he got a job or agreed to rent out the downstairs, it wouldn't have to. And he said that wasn't his problem. I posted it on Facebook just to see if anyone would be interested, and a student reached out. She's a college student who wanted to rent, and it was a perfect fit because she didn't have a pet and was going to be gone most of the day anyway. I said okay, and went excited to my husband, who was really pissed, saying we aren't renting out his space. I was pissed he wouldn't sacrifice anything for our sons when I'm working and raising them, and he isn't working now but isn't doing anything to help. I told him I was moving out with our sons, and I think he recognized I was serious and gave up and told me to do whatever I wanted. I moved his gaming stuff to our living room, and a student moved in today. He is still pissed that I undermined him, and I feel kind of bad because I didn't want to make the decision without his agreement. But at the same time, I feel like he was selfish to refuse to either get a job or give up his man cave for our sons to continue their activities and keep us from going into debt. You are a single mom with 3 children. So very sorry. 100% not day home. Yep, feels that way. With all due respect and so much sympathy, why do you stay? He is setting a terrible example for your sons. To be honest, my doubt is around them enough to set anything. Hey OP, literally what is good about your husband? Not stay home. How does he justify that you don't have an area of the house that he essentially has a 1-bedroom apartment to hang out in? He should not have had a man cave to start with, and after he's back working, I would keep renting it. Men naturally are supposed to have man caves, and all his friends have them. That's how he justified it. Men are also supposed to get off their butt and at least help support their families. My partner graded ISTEP test while job hunting after he graduated with his degree. I supported the family, occasionally working 2 jobs while he was in college. That's the sort of crap you just do when you have a family. Not stay home. I make $20 an hour now. I don't have kids, but I guarantee you if I had to work in fields beneath me, I would. That's utter BS. I don't understand people like this. When you need a job, you get one. I have zero sympathy for people who can work but choose not to because it's beneath them. That attitude is a slap in the face to the workers who have no choice but to work those jobs. Shaking my head. You make half of my monthly income just on the space alone. How childish and elitist. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not wanting to help my mother-in-law in her golden years? My wife, 39 female, and I, 38 male, have been married for over a decade and have 2 kids, 14 and 12. We both work full-time and do pretty well at our respective careers. We are in a pretty good place financially. We have money saved up for college funds, good retirement plans, not a lot of debts, etc. Honestly, things are pretty good. However, a couple weeks ago, my wife told me that her mom and her stepdad have been having some pretty serious financial problems. Like don't have any money saved for retirement and could possibly lose their house type problems. These issues have led to mother-in-law and stepdad separating and possibly divorce. Mother-in-law is currently living with my wife's aunt and uncle, but they have 2 adult kids that live with them and don't have the space. My wife is an only child and wanted us to look into what we can do to help. I asked her what she means by help, because I would be okay with maybe giving a one-time lump sum to get mother-in-law back on her feet, but I'm not okay with a long-term situation where we are supporting her for the rest of her life. My wife said she wants to look into maybe remodeling our house and building a mother-in-law suite. I told her that is a non-starter for me. I love my kids, but I am also looking forward to them moving out into the world on their own in a few years. I don't want another dependent, an adult no less, living with us for another 20 years. My wife then suggested the idea of an assisted living home or condo for mother-in-law. But But when I asked how she would pay for it and my wife said, we probably would have to, I told her that I don't want to do that either. I asked why her aunt and uncle can't help out, and she said that they have their own kids living with them and they aren't in a position to help like we are. I told my wife again that I am comfortable with a one-time lump sum, but I don't want to be supporting mother-in-law for the rest of her life. I didn't sign up for that. My wife got upset with me and asked me if I would feel the same way if it was my parents. I told her that I can't really answer that because my parents worked hard, planned accordingly, and are in a good financial position to retire soon. I told her that I feel bad for the situation mother-in-law is in, and I am willing to help to a point, but I'm not willing to have her live with us for the rest of her life, nor I am willing to pay for her living arrangements indefinitely. I told her that we have our own financial obligations to our kids and our own life plans and retirement goals, and I do not want to jeopardize those or delay them by multiple years. I told her that her mom is close to being able to collect Social Security. She's 62 and get on Medicare and other government programs, and that she might even qualify for some housing programs, and we can look into those. My wife told me I was being cruel and callous for not being willing to help her mom more. She told me I was being an a-hole by wanting to just throw her mom a few bucks and then turn my back on her. Now for the comments. No a-holes here. Damn, this is tough. First of all, 62 is young. Like, this woman could be around another 25 to 30 years. So I definitely get you on not wanting to sign up for an additional dependent for the better part of the rest of your life. Especially since there will likely be massive medical expenses, and you sound like you have your financial plans and retirement goals on lock. But I get your wife's angle too. It's her mom, and she wants to help her mom. I guess my advice would be careful how you talk about the situation. It sounds very judgmental. Am I making those same judgments? Sure, silently in my head. Maybe mother-in-law was lazy, maybe she was dumb, maybe she was unlucky. Maybe our nation is sliding into a dystopia where poverty and old age are death sentences. In any case, not really helpful for your relationship with your wife to frame things in terms of mother-in-law somehow deserving of her predicament because she made bad choices or whatever. When you marry someone, their family's problems become your problems. You did, in fact, sign up for that. Does this mean you need to let mother-in-law move in or pay for a retirement home? Not necessarily. But as long as your wife wants to give her mom some kind of support and comfort, you're going to have to find some acceptable compromise with her with how to do it. And maybe mother-in-law mortgaged the house and took out loans to pay college tuition for the OP's wife. Maybe stepdad gambled all the money away on currency speculation and game stock. Maybe one of them has health issues. You make a very good point. My wife paid for her college all on her own, not a dime from mother-in-law. We actually just finished paying off her loans in the past couple years. To my knowledge, neither mother-in-law or stepdad gamble. They don't even drink. Like many people in their 60s, they do have health issues, but they also have horrible American insurance. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife that she cannot replace our dead son with our daughter? So I and my wife, Liana, had our first baby young. I was 18 and out of high school when she got pregnant. Our son Leon was amazing. He was the most fantastic baby. And when he got older, it turned out that he was something of a prodigy. Like, at 14 years old, he was learning university physics, and his teachers were recommending us to let him skip grades so he could graduate early. He begged us not to because he loved his friends and didn't want to leave them. Like, he'd joined a basketball team for them, and it turned out he was also just fantastic at it. But then when he was 15, we lost him. Our daughter Mara was a year old when we lost him, and somehow we managed to keep on going even though we both didn't want to. We've had 3 more kids since then, and we'll be adopting another, but the hole in our hearts will never be filled. So Mara is going to start high school, and Liana has been pushing her so hard. She is an amazing, intelligent girl, not a prodigy in academics, but she is an insane tennis player and an amazing singer. Every time Liana pushes her and she doesn't succeed academically, she comes to me and points out how Leon would have easily done it. She has never compared Mara to Leon in front of her face, but what if she hears what she says one day? It would crush her. So I ended up in an argument with my wife and I pointed out that Mara is her own person and she cannot turn her into a replacement for Leon. She practically turned volcanic and sent me to the couch and has been very curt with me since then. Just calling me an a-hole and saying I have no right to use our son in an argument. I feel horrible about it. But I don't think I'm the a-hole because my intention wasn't to use his memory like a tool. But maybe if my head is in the sand, you can let me know. Not the a-hole. Unfortunately, she is the one using him as tool and comparison for your daughter. She will grow up to dislike or hate her mom if she keeps doing this. Your wife needs to seek therapy. Honestly, this is what I'm afraid of. She loves her mom so much. Hell, I'll say it, she loves her more than me. And maybe that's the way it should be, given all a mother does. So I absolutely don't want that. Your wife needed grief counseling yesterday. Not the a-hole, but your being the a-hole or not isn't as important as your wife getting some help understanding that internally comparing her kids will help no one and only hurt her relationships with her family in the long run. Your daughter was around the age when your son died, and you're going to feel a lot of crap in the coming years as you see milestones your son never achieved. Best of luck. Not the a-hole. I was pissed at a title. I thought it was the other way around, but the context really makes you a good father for thinking about your kids and not comparing them. I guess your wife really needs therapy. If she keeps this behavior, it'll be bad for your kids. They'll be insecure mentally and emotionally. If your daughter by any chance finds out about the comparison, she'll probably hate her mom or will exhaust herself just to please her. Your wife is already pushing/pressuring her hard. It wouldn't be too long if she gets sick of this behavior and hate her. Exactly. Not everyone is a prodigy and not everyone needs to be. We would have loved Leon even if he wasn't a super genius, and no amount of pressuring is going to turn Mara into him. First story is titled, Update. Am I the a-hole for not agreeing to a paternity test unless my husband goes to therapy? Original post. I, 28 female, and my husband, 32 male, have a 3-year-old son together. There's never been any doubt that my husband is the father. I've never given him any cause for concern that I cheated on him. He acknowledges all of this. Last week, he came to me and said that for the last few months, he has been plagued, his word, with this anxiety that our son is not his. They don't look identical, granted, but they definitely share similar features and I see my husband whenever I look at my son. I was obviously blindsided by this. I had no idea who was having these thoughts. I asked him to explain why he thought that he wasn't his, and he couldn't really provide any answer other than a gut feeling. He asked me if I would be okay if he got a paternity test done so it could ease his mind. I initially said absolutely not. No way in hell. I was very, very offended. He told me that he could just do it without my permission, and I said if he did that, I would never forgive him. My husband does not have a history of anxiety, but he did lose his job back at the start of the pandemic, so he's been with our son most of the time while I work my full-time job from home. I know this hasn't been easy on him. I'm not a psychiatrist or anything, but maybe he is starting to resent our son or something from just having to be around him constantly. After our heated conversation, I spoke with some friends about it, and they said that he was probably having psychiatric problems due to the stress of not having a job. I came back to my husband and said that if he went to therapy and maybe started taking some anti-anxiety meds, that I would consider getting the test. He was very upset at this and said that once he got the results of the test back, he wouldn't be anxious anymore, and that I wasn't being fair by making him go through a whole rigmarole, again his word, just to get peace of mind, which was a phrase he used a lot during this time. He again threatened to just get the test without my permission and said this would effectively end our relationship. I think there's something more serious going on here, and I thought that my solution here is as fair as I'm willing to be. My friends are divided. Some think I should just take the test, and others are saying he's being insane and that if I cave to this, there's just going to be something else. I need some neutral perspective here. Am I the a-hole? Top comments before we read the updates. Not the a-hole, even in the best case scenario, where this is all due to anxiety brought on by the pandemic. Don't believe that after the test, he'll be better. Soon it'll be 2 tests, then 3 because he'll be afraid of false positives. This type of anxiety gets worse until it moves on to something else. I've had the same obsessive anxiety for years, and it didn't get better until after therapy and medication. I still struggle. Stand your ground, OP. This is the exact problem. I have generalized anxiety disorder. The thing about anxiety is that it cares very little about things like truth or reality or proof. Just knowing intellectually that you're being ridiculous has never stopped an intrusive thought from coming back.
If she got the test, Opie's husband might feel better for a day or week or two. But after that, his brain will either go back to the same worry, test results be damned, or find a new one to latch onto. Opie, right now your refusal is probably feeding his anxiety. She has something to hide. So I'm not going to recommend that you hold firm to him getting treatment first. But I would hold out until he makes a concrete steps toward getting treated, such as making doctor's appointment. And if he cancels afterwards, because I'm fine now, then draw the line there. And definitely refuse the next ridiculous anxiety request. Because it will be coming. Opie, I'm so sorry for saying this, but according to my psychology professor, if your partner is obsessively worrying about you cheating on them, they are likely to be cheating on you. Guilt projection. I've heard that too. It's also my understanding that consistent and irrational fear of cheating is associated with borderline personality disorder, which of course means the medication and therapy would be the best course of action. Edit to add, my apologies that this sounded like I was trying to diagnose him. This situation is definitely not enough to warrant this, and I am not a professional. I only suggested the idea as something that could be worth looking into, if it does seem to be a psychological issue as Opie suspects, and to agree that therapy would be helpful because it easily could be related to his mental health. Not the a-hole, Opie. Your suggestions will all benefit him. You're not putting him through anything. You're trying to help him. I appreciate this, but I'm very certain that he's not cheating on me. Not the a-hole. That is offensive to you and to your child. If my husband did that to me, I would have told him the same thing. You do this behind my back, it's a deal breaker. Adios, a-hole. Edit. I haven't read all the comments here because the amount of responses has been overwhelming. However, I want to say that I really do not appreciate strangers attempting to diagnose my husband over the internet. It is disgustingly presumptuous. I'm his wife, and I don't feel qualified to do that, which is exactly why I want to go to a licensed therapist. Another thing I'm seeing pop up is that I'm somehow demanding that he take medication. I said maybe medication, meaning that I only think he should be on medication if a licensed therapist prescribes them to him. I don't want to shove pills down his throat, which seems to be what some people think I want to do. As for the numerous suggestions of marriage counseling as opposed to individual therapy, I think this is a great idea. I didn't initially consider it because I was so focused on it being his problem, but we are ultimately a team. And I'll suggest that to him today. Hopefully it goes better. Thanks everyone for your input. Now for the update. Thanks to everyone who commented on my original post. Unfortunately, this is not a great update. If you don't want to read it all, the bottom line is, we're heading toward divorce. I took some of the commenters' advice to go to couples therapy, which we did the same week as my first post. I had to push him a bit to get him to agree to the therapy, but I told him it was either this or I would never give in to the test. The first Zoom session was a little awkward, since neither of us had ever done therapy before. After listening to both of us, she basically said that she thought we should do the test to see if that eases his anxiety, and that if it doesn't, which at the time was my concern, that we could go from there. So, my husband was thrilled, and I agreed, but I wanted to be on Zoom with the therapist when we received the results, so we could talk it out with her there, which she was fine with. So, we did the test, and we did our Zoom session when our results were in. And surprise, surprise, the paternity test says he's 99% likely to be the father. He didn't appear relieved or happy or anything of what I expected. Maybe this was unfair, but I did expect him to cry and maybe apologize to me for his lack of trust. This wasn't just my imagination though, because when the therapist asked him in our first session how he would feel if the test came back saying he was the father, he said he would feel relieved, but he was angry. He kept saying that it was over and that he didn't want to talk about it. He kept repeating it's done over and over when the therapist would try to ask a question about how he was feeling. And he was obviously not listening when I tried to talk about my feelings. And when I told him I wanted to talk about it, he yelled at me, which he never does. What else is there to freaking talk about? I was mortified that he was talking to me this way in front of a therapist, and she said she would schedule a new session once he had time to process. After the session, he wouldn't look at me or speak to me. That he was so upset that he was our wonderful son's father made me absolutely lose my mind. We screamed at each other, and it ended with me saying that I can't do this anymore. He's at his brother's apartment now, finally away from our son, which is obviously what he wanted all along, and my mom is now staying in my place to help me out around the house. I texted him this weekend, asking if he wanted to do another therapy session, and he asked if I really thought that would help, and I had to admit that didn't. The speed at which this whole thing happened, just a month ago, I would have said we have a happy marriage, is still completely shocking to me. But I don't see us recovering from this. This felt cathartic to type out though, so thanks, I guess. Now for the closing comments. I'm sorry it turned out like this. I have a feeling he has some deeper issue, and he was never going to accept any answer other than he's not the father, because he's got it in his head now. I hope he gets the help he needs, and I hope you find peace in your future. I think he wanted their son to not be his son, so he would be justified to leave Opie. It sounds like that's what he wanted and needed an excuse to end things. Opie, I hope you get sole custody. Your soon-to-be ex is a gargantuan a-hole, and your kids will be better off not having him in their lives. Please get them and yourself into therapy. You all need it. I think he already wanted to end the marriage for whatever reason, and the paternity thing was just a ruse. He probably figured either you'd be so outraged that it could send you two into a downward spiral in which you'd look like the bad guy for refusing to do the test, or maybe there was some chance he wasn't the father, and he could then feel righteous in his reasoning for leaving you. Now, he's acting like such an a-hole that you want to leave him. So, I think he wants your marriage to end but doesn't have the spine to do it properly. I thought this too, that he just wanted out of the marriage and was looking for a way out. But if he suddenly announced he didn't want to be with me anymore, I would be shocked and hurt obviously, but it would be better than it is now. Now, he's basically announced that he's done with being a father, which after being a loving and devoted dad of 3+ years, is just completely crazy to me. I thought that, if we were ever going to split up, we'd at least co-parent peacefully. This is just so unfair to our boy, and my heart is breaking for him. Geesh, he sounds terrible. I can't imagine what a shock it must be for you, and your son is going to have a hard time understanding. Maybe it's some kind of midlife crisis, who knows. It doesn't really matter why he's doing this. Just make sure you document everything and get a lawyer ASAP. Also, when he first told me that he wanted a test, he said that he wanted my approval to do it. I said no and told him that if he did it behind my back, I would leave him, and he listened. He didn't betray me like that and told me that he didn't want a divorce, just a test. So why all of a sudden would that change, based on results that should have made him happy? I just can't explain it. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for throwing my biological daughter out of my house after she accused me of abandoning her? Me and my ex-girlfriend were together for barely 1 year before we broke up. She came into my life 8 years after we broke up, suing me for child support for a 7-year-old girl, Anne. After proving paternity, I tried to sue for custody. We were in different states, and courts rules entirely in her favor. I got visitation every 2 months. In reality, I hardly got to see her once/twice a year. Edit. I tried to visit more but my ex didn't let me. Went to court. Nothing happened. When Anne was 10, my ex asked me to give up my parental rights. I refused. Then, the game started. She would arrange visits last minute so that I cannot afford the tickets, and cancel plans last minute so that I would lose money. She kept this up, and I broke and gave up my rights. Anne too had a father figure, and pretty soon, the calls stopped too. When Anne was 10, they moved to another country. I did not talk to them after that. Now, I am married and have 2 very beautiful stepchildren, whom I love very much. Anne is now 19, and she reached out to me. She was in the state and wanted to visit. I invited her to my house. My family was at my wife's place. I haven't even said hello before she started ranting at me. She told me about how I was a deadbeat father, and she hated her mom and stepdad, and how I abandoned her, etc. I asked her what she was talking about. Turns out, ex and stepfather were really crazy and made her life miserable. She is now in no contact with them. She talked about how I abandoned her, and there was no responsible adult who even cared about her a little bit. At this point, I told her that it wasn't my fault, that her mom didn't tell me/pressured me into giving up custody. I guess Anne didn't know that. I explained everything. Even after I explained everything, she continued to yell at me about how I should have done something. I calmly asked her what I should have done. She became more angry and yelled more as she didn't have an answer. I calmly told her that I have always wanted a relationship with her, and I was so glad when she called, but it's very obvious that she is only here to place blame and I wanted her to leave. She said that wasn't fair, and she only came here to know me. I calmly pointed out that she was here for 2 hours, and she hasn't asked a single thing about me and only yelled. In the end, she stormed out. I am still open to having a relationship with her, but I'm not willing to be anyone's punching bag. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole, but you have to realize your ex told her lies about you her whole life. Let her process what you told her, and if/when she reaches out again, try not to hold this against her. I really don't see how the kid is the a-hole either. I don't blame her at all for how she reacted. That's 19 years of bottled up emotions finally surfacing. You're exactly right that she needs to cool off and process everything, and Opie needs to keep a line of communication open for when she's ready. But I think no a-holes here is a more accurate judgment. The only a-holes involved are the mother and stepdad, but they're not relevant to the judgment. She's pretty much an adult, and should understand that yelling at someone for 2 straight hours without trying to understand someone else's side doesn't help anything, regardless of what she's been told her entire life. You're the a-hole. She's 19 and has been brainwashed and felt abandoned her entire life. You are an adult, giving her entirely new information and couldn't deal with her misguided emotions for 2 seconds and threw her out. Way to confirm everything she was ever told about you, and to be the latest adult that utterly failed her. Right? And it's not just anger, it's grief. She was standing in Opie's house, grieving the better life she could have had and deserved. Opie got a happy little family, and his daughter got a life of trauma. Not the a-hole. For your latest action, not allowing yourself to be abused is a pretty basic boundary, but I think you can be more empathetic to her hurt and blame. You should be willing to listen to her feelings, even if they're negative about you, but you shouldn't have put up with being yelled at for hours. I'd reach out again, express your desire to connect, but stick to the no telling at each other boundary. Don't tell her she's wrong for being hurt and blaming you. The boundary should just be the yelling, and read up on empathetic listening. Oh man. So, my bio dad signed away his rights to my dad when I was 4. I had 2 great parents and was still angry at bio dad for giving me up. Even after I heard his side of the story, I was still angry. If you want a relationship with her, you need to take the yelling for a bit. She is angry. You can't fix it if you don't allow her to get that anger out. So, you're the a-hole. I strongly suggest family counseling for the 2 of you.